The rain fell in soft sheets against the window of the community center, blurring the faces of strangers gathered for the annual Coastal Art Fair. Claire Reed stood near the pottery display, her fingers absently tracing the rim of a ceramic bowl painted in shades of sea-foam green. At 48, she carried herself with the careful composure of someone who had learned to function through permanent grief. Her husband, Daniel, stood beside her, one hand resting lightly on the small of her back. They had come to support their neighbor's teenage daughter, whose watercolor landscapes were being exhibited for the first time. The space hummed with quiet conversation. Local artists mingled with buyers. Children darted between displays. Claire was half listening to Daniel discuss salmon fishing with an older man when a burst of laughter from across the room made her turn. Two young women, perhaps in their early 20s, stood before a textile installation. They wore matching denim jackets, their dark blonde hair pulled back in identical low ponytails. As they turned to examine another piece, Claire's breath caught in her throat. Each woman wore a delicate silver bracelet on her left wrist. Even from 15 feet away, Claire could see the distinctive design. 3 interlinked hearts with a tiny lighthouse charm dangling from the center. The room seemed to tilt. Claire gripped Daniel's arm, her knuckles white against his navy sweater. "Daniel," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the ambient noise. "Look at those 2 women, their bracelets." Daniel followed her gaze, squinting slightly. His expression shifted from curiosity to confusion to something approaching shock. "Claire, that's—" "I know what it is," she interrupted, already moving toward them. Her legs felt unsteady, but she forced herself forward, weaving between clusters of people. Daniel followed close behind, his hand reaching for hers. The young women noticed her approach. The taller one, whose features were slightly sharper, smiled politely. "Hi there. Are you enjoying the fair?" Claire's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. She stared at the bracelets, then at their faces, then back to the bracelets. Her hand rose, fingers extending toward the jewelry, before she caught herself. "I'm sorry," Claire managed, her voice trembling. "Your bracelets. Where did you get them?" The 2 women exchanged glances. The shorter one, whose eyes were a striking hazel, touched her bracelet protectively. "They were gifts from our father. Why?" "When did he give them to you?" Claire pressed, stepping closer. Daniel's hand tightened on her shoulder, a gentle warning, but she shook him off. "We've had them since we were kids," the taller woman replied, her tone cooling slightly. "Is there a problem?" Claire fumbled with her purse, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. She pulled out her phone, scrolling frantically through photos until she found what she needed. She held the screen toward them, her heart hammering against her ribs. The image showed 2 identical 7-year-old girls with dark blonde hair wearing matching summer dresses. Each child held up her left wrist, displaying a silver bracelet. 3 interlinked hearts, a lighthouse charm. "These are my daughters," Claire said, her voice breaking. "Abigail and Hannah Reed. They vanished 15 years ago." The young women stared at the photograph. The color drained from their faces. The taller one took a half step backward, her hand moving to her companion's arm. "I don't understand," she said slowly. "What are you saying?" "Those bracelets," Claire continued, fighting to keep her composure. "I had them custom-made for my daughter's 7th birthday. There were only 2. The jeweler in Cannon Beach created them specifically for us. The lighthouse represents the old Tillamook light, where my husband proposed." Daniel stepped forward, his voice steadier than Claire's, but thick with emotion. "We live just outside Seaside, Oregon. Our daughters disappeared from our backyard on August 14, 2001. They were playing on the swing set one moment, and then they were gone." The shorter woman shook her head. Confusion etched across her features. "No, that's not possible. Our father said we were born in California. He raised us after our mother died." "What are your names?" Claire asked, though she thought she might collapse from the force of her own hope. "I'm Melissa," the taller one said hesitantly. "This is Sarah, Melissa and Sarah Hartley." Claire closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself. Would you be willing to speak with the police, just to verify? If I'm wrong, I apologize for upsetting you, but those bracelets, we need to go, Melissa said abruptly, taking Sarah's hand. This is insane. Please, Claire begged, reaching out but not touching them. Please, just one conversation. 15 years of searching, 15 years of not knowing. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She looked at her sister, then at Claire, then at the photograph still displayed on the phone screen. We look exactly like them, she whispered. Daniel pulled out his wallet, extracting a business card. This is our information. If you change your mind, call us anytime, day or night. Melissa took the card with obvious reluctance, but she took it. The two women moved quickly toward the exit, their matching jackets disappearing into the gray Oregon afternoon. Claire stood frozen, watching them leave. Other fairgoers had stopped to observe the scene, their expressions ranging from curiosity to concern. Daniel wrapped his arms around his wife as she began to shake. We found them, Claire whispered against his chest. After all this time. Maybe, Daniel cautioned, but his own voice wavered with barely suppressed emotion. We don't know for certain yet, but Claire knew. She had spent 15 years memorizing every detail of her daughters' faces, studying every photograph, tracing the curve of their smiles and the shape of their eyes. Those women were Abigail and Hannah. She would stake her life on it. The question that terrified her now was simple. What happened to her daughters? The drive home passed in silence, broken only by the rhythmic swish of windshield wipers against rain. Claire sat rigid in the passenger seat, her phone clutched in both hands, staring at the photograph of her daughters. Daniel navigated the familiar coastal highway with careful attention, his jaw tight with concentration. Neither spoke until they pulled into the gravel driveway of their weathered Cape Cod-style home, the one they had refused to leave despite the memories that haunted every corner. Inside, Claire moved through the rooms as if in a trance. She went directly to the hallway closet, pushing aside winter coats and reaching for the shelf above. Her fingers found the worn edges of a cardboard storage box, the same one she had packed and repacked a dozen times over the years, unable to fully put it away, but unable to keep it in constant view. Daniel helped her lift it down. Together they carried it to the living room, setting it on the coffee table between the sofa and the stone fireplace. The box had once held printer paper. Now it contained fragments of interrupted childhoods. Claire removed the lid with reverent care. On top lay a purple spiral notebook, its cover decorated with stickers of butterflies and stars. Hannah's journal from second grade, filled with careful block letters describing playground games and favorite foods. Beneath it, Abigail's report card from the same year, all satisfactory marks and a teacher's note praising her kindness to classmates. I haven't looked at these in almost 3 years, Claire admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. She lifted out 2 small pairs of sneakers, faded pink with white laces. Remember how they insisted on matching shoes for everything? Daniel nodded, settling beside her on the sofa. He reached into the box and retrieved a photograph album bound in pale blue fabric. As he opened it, their daughters smiled up at them from frozen moments. First day of kindergarten. Halloween costumes as twin ladybugs. Building sand castles at Cannon Beach. The iconic Haystack Rock rising from the surf behind them. They turned pages slowly, Claire's fingers trembling as she traced the outline of Abigail's face in one image, then Hannah's in another. The girls had been mirror images of each other, right down to the small beauty mark on their left cheekbones. Only their parents and closest friends could reliably tell them apart. Abigail had been slightly more outgoing, quicker to laugh. Hannah had been the thoughtful one, always watching and listening before joining in. They would be 22 now, Daniel said quietly. College graduates, maybe, starting careers, dating. Claire bit her lip hard enough to taste blood. She had played this game countless times, imagining the milestones her daughters would never reach. Or so she had believed until 2 hours ago. She set aside the album and dug deeper into the box, searching for something specific. Her hand closed around a manila envelope, and she pulled it out carefully. Inside were police reports, newspaper clippings, and her own meticulously kept notes from the investigation. "I want to review everything again," she announced, spreading papers across the coffee table. "The timeline, the witness statements, all of it." Daniel leaned forward, studying the documents he had not examined in years. The police report was dated August 14, 2001. Claire had called 911 at 5:47 p.m., 17 minutes after she had last seen the girls playing in the backyard. The responding officers had arrived within 12 minutes and immediately begun canvassing the neighborhood. "We were both home," Claire recited, though they both knew the facts by heart. "You were in the garage organizing fishing equipment. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner. The girls were on the swing set. And then I went inside to check on the roast. When I came back out to tell them to wash up, they were gone." "The back gate was still latched from the inside," Daniel added. "No signs of forced entry anywhere, no sounds of struggle or screaming." Claire nodded, her eyes scanning the witness statements clipped together with a rusted paperclip. Mrs. Yeforas Patterson from next door had seen nothing unusual. The Kowalski family 2 houses down had been at a baseball game in Portland. The teenage boy across the street had been mowing his lawn with headphones on and noticed nothing. Then Claire's attention caught on a statement she had read dozens of times but never fully processed. Mr. Raymond Hartley, a substitute teacher who lived 4 blocks away, had reported seeing 2 young girls matching the twins' description walking along Shore Pine Road around 5:30 p.m. that day. He had assumed they were heading to a friend's house and thought nothing of it until he saw the missing posters the next morning. Claire's breath stopped. "Daniel, look at this name." He leaned closer, reading over her shoulder. His body went rigid. "Hartley, the same last name those women at the fair gave us." "Raymond Hartley," Claire repeated, her voice shaking. "He was a substitute teacher. He gave a statement to police. And 15 years later, 2 women wearing my daughter's bracelets introduced themselves as Melissa and Sarah Hartley." They stared at each other, the implications hanging heavy between them. Daniel reached for his own phone, searching for the business card he had photographed after handing it to the young women. He found Melissa's contact information and hesitated. "Should we call the police first?" he asked. Claire was already dialing. She pressed the phone to her ear, listening to it ring once, twice, 3 times. Finally, a voice answered, "Seaside Police Department. How may I direct your call?" "I need to speak with Detective Morris," Claire said urgently. "Please, it's about the Reed case, the missing twins from 2001. There was a pause, then the sound of a transfer. After what felt like an eternity, a familiar, gravelly voice came on the line. "This is Morris." "Detective, it's Claire Reed. I think I found my daughters." Detective Nathan Morris had been 3 years from retirement when Abigail and Hannah Reed vanished. Now he was 71, officially retired for a decade, but his voice still carried the weight of someone who had never truly left the job behind. Claire heard him exhale slowly on the other end of the line, a sound she recognized from countless conversations over the years when leads had evaporated and hope had dimmed. "Claire, walk me through what happened. Everything. Don't leave out any details." She described the art fair, the matching bracelets, the undeniable resemblance between the young women and her daughters. She mentioned the names they had given, Melissa and Sarah Hartley. When she spoke that surname, she heard Morris's breathing change. "Did you say Hartley?" "Yes." "Detective, I've been looking at the old case files. Raymond Hartley gave a witness statement. He reported seeing 2 girls matching our daughter's description on Shore Pine Road that afternoon." There was a long pause. Claire could hear papers rustling in the background, the scrape of a chair. "I remember Raymond Hartley," Morris said slowly. "Substitute teacher. Lived over on Hemlock Street back then. quiet man, very cooperative during the investigation. He was one of dozens of people who came forward with potential sightings that day. We interviewed him twice, checked his alibi, found nothing suspicious. What was his alibi? Claire pressed, her free hand gripping the edge of the coffee table. He said he was driving to his sister's place in Astoria that evening. We verified it with the sister. She confirmed he arrived around 6:30, stayed for dinner, left around 9. The timeline didn't work for an abduction. Claire's mind raced. What if the sister lied? What if she was covering for him? Claire, I understand what you're feeling right now, but we need to be methodical about this, Morris cautioned. First things first, did these women agree to speak with police? No, they left before we could convince them. But we gave them our contact information. She glanced at Daniel, who nodded encouragement. Detective, I need you to find out everything you can about Raymond Hartley, where he is now, whether he has daughters named Melissa and Sarah. I'm already looking, Morris replied. She heard the clicking of a keyboard. Give me the phone number you have for them. I'll run it and see what comes up. Claire rattled off the number from Melissa's business card, more keyboard clicks, then silence that stretched for nearly a minute. Interesting, Morris murmured. The number is registered to a Melissa Hartley, age 22, current address in Lincoln City. That's about 40 miles south of you. Age 22, Claire repeated, her voice cracking, the exact age Abigail and Hannah would be now. I'm putting in a request for more information, Morris said. I'll contact my former colleagues at Seaside PD and see if we can get a current address for Raymond Hartley. In the meantime, Claire, I need you to promise me something. Do not approach these women or Raymond Hartley on your own. If your suspicions are correct, we're dealing with a potential kidnapping that's 15 years old. We need to handle this properly. I'm not waiting another 15 years for answers, Claire said firmly. I'm not asking you to wait. I'm asking you to let law enforcement do this right, so that if there's a case to be made, it doesn't fall apart because of procedural errors. His voice softened. You've waited this long. Give me 48 hours to gather information and coordinate with the appropriate people. Can you do that? Claire looked at Daniel, who had been listening to every word. He nodded slowly, though his expression was pained. 48 hours, Claire agreed. But if I don't hear from you by then, I'm going to Lincoln City myself. After ending the call, Claire sat in silence, staring at the papers spread across the coffee table. Her eyes kept returning to Raymond Hartley's witness statement, his neat handwriting describing two girls in matching pink shorts and white T-shirts walking along Shore Pine Road at approximately 5:30 that afternoon. I need to see what else we have on him, she said abruptly, pulling the police report closer. She scanned through the list of witnesses interviewed, finding Hartley's name alongside his address at the time, 847 Hemlock Street, Seaside, Oregon. Daniel was already on his laptop, typing rapidly. I'm searching for Raymond Hartley in Oregon Public Records. He waited as the search loaded, then leaned closer to the screen. Here, Raymond Michael Hartley, born March 1959, which would make him 65 now. The last known address from DMV records is 2243 Coastal Hills Drive, Lincoln City. The same town where Melissa's phone is registered, Claire breathed. Daniel clicked through several more pages. He's listed as self-employed. Property records show he owns the house on Coastal Hills Drive, purchased in 2003, 2 years after Abigail and Hannah disappeared. Claire's hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against her thighs, trying to steady herself. What kind of person abducts children and then stays in the same general area? Doesn't that seem incredibly bold? Or incredibly arrogant, Daniel replied grimly. He gave the police a statement, knowing they were looking for those exact girls. He put himself directly in the investigation. Claire stood abruptly, pacing the length of the living room. The rain had intensified, hammering against the windows in sheets. She moved to the fireplace mantel where photographs of Abigail and Hannah stood in silver frames, forever frozen at age 7. Their smiling faces seemed to watch her, waiting. What about the sister in Astoria? She asked suddenly, turning back to Daniel. The one who provided his alibi. Can we find her? Daniel's fingers flew across the keyboard. The police report mentions her first name only, Martha Hartley's sister, residing in Astoria. Let me search for property records there. He worked in silence for several minutes, pulling up multiple databases. Got something. Martha Hartley owned a house at 1156 Marine Drive in Astoria from 1987 to 2009. She sold it and moved to Portland. I have a current address. We should talk to her, Claire said immediately. Claire, we promised Morris we'd wait. We promised we wouldn't approach Raymond Hartley or the girls. We didn't promise anything about his sister. She grabbed her coat from the hook by the door. Come on. Portland is only 90 minutes away. We can be there and back before dark. Daniel hesitated, clearly torn between caution and the same desperate need for answers that drove his wife. Finally, he closed the laptop and stood. Let me get my keys. They took Daniel's truck, the same vehicle they had driven countless times over the years, distributing missing persons flyers and following cold leads. The rain followed them inland as they drove along Highway 26, through thick forests of Douglas fir and Sitka spruce. Claire spent the drive searching for information on her phone, finding precious little about either Raymond or Martha Hartley. Neither had much of a social media presence. No criminal records appeared in public databases. Raymond had worked sporadically as a substitute teacher throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, before stopping entirely. What do you think he told them? Claire asked quietly as they approached the outskirts of Portland. If those women really are Abigail and Hannah, what story did he feed them about who they are? I don't know, Daniel admitted, but they seemed genuinely confused when you showed them that photograph. They didn't run or refuse to look. They were shocked. Because they don't know the truth, Claire said, certainty settling over her like a weight. He stole them and convinced them they were someone else. Martha Hartley's address led them to a modest apartment complex in southeast Portland, a 3-story building with faded blue siding and overgrown landscaping. They climbed exterior stairs to the second floor, finding Unit 204 at the end of a narrow walkway. Claire raised her hand to knock, then paused. What if she slams the door in our faces? She whispered. Then we'll have our answer about whether she knew, Daniel replied. Claire knocked 3 times, firm and deliberate. They waited, hearing movement inside, then footsteps approaching. The door opened to reveal a woman in her late 60s with steel-gray hair and suspicious eyes. Can I help you? Martha Hartley asked, her hand still on the doorknob, ready to close it. My name is Claire Reed. This is my husband, Daniel. We need to ask you about your brother, Raymond. Martha's expression shifted from suspicion to something harder to read. Recognition, perhaps, or wariness. What about him? 15 years ago, you told police that Raymond was with you the evening of August 14th, 2001, that he arrived at your home in Astoria around 6:30 and stayed for dinner. Is that correct? The color drained from Martha's face. She stepped back, her grip tightening on the door. You're those parents, the ones whose daughters went missing. Yes, Claire said simply. And today we met 2 young women wearing bracelets that belonged to our daughters, bracelets that were unique, custom-made. Those women introduced themselves using your brother's last name. Martha's mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes darted between Claire and Daniel, calculating something. Finally she spoke, her voice barely audible. You should come inside. While Martha Hartley's apartment was small and meticulously organized, every surface clear of clutter, every book on the shelf arranged by height. She led Claire and Daniel to a brown corduroy sofa that looked decades old but well-maintained. Martha herself perched on the edge of an armchair across from them, her hands folded tightly in her lap. I've thought about this conversation for 15 years, Martha began, her voice steady but strained. Wondered if it would ever happen. Hoped it wouldn't, but also hoped it would. She looked directly at Claire. Your daughters, are they alive? We believe so, Claire said carefully. 2 young women wearing their bracelets, women who are exactly the age Abigail and Hannah would be now. Martha closed her eyes briefly, her lips moving in what might have been a prayer or a curse. When she opened them again, tears had gathered at the corners. "I need to tell you something, but I need you to understand that I didn't know. Not at first, not for years." Daniel leaned forward, his expression hardening. "What didn't you know?" "Raymond called me that afternoon, August 14th, 2001. He was frantic, rambling about how God had given him a second chance, how he couldn't let these angels slip away. He said he was bringing his daughters to stay with me for a few days, that there had been a family emergency with their mother." Martha's hands twisted together. "I believed him because I wanted to. My brother had been devastated after losing his wife and daughters in that car accident in 1998. He'd been so broken, barely functioning. The idea that he'd found someone new, had a family again, it seemed like a miracle." Claire's stomach lurched. Car accident? His wife Elena and their twin daughters, Jessica and Jennifer. They were 7 years old. There was black ice on Highway 101 north of Lincoln City. The car went off the road into a ravine. All three died instantly. Martha wiped at her eyes. "Raymond was never the same after that. He quit his full-time teaching position, could only manage substitute work. He moved from place to place, couldn't settle anywhere." "So when he showed up with 2 7-year-old girls," Daniel said, his voice tight with controlled anger, "you didn't question it? He said he'd met their mother while substitute teaching in California, that they had gotten married quietly, that she'd died suddenly from an aneurysm. He had documentation, birth certificates, photos. The girls called him Daddy." Martha's voice broke. "They looked terrified, but Raymond said they were traumatized by their mother's death. I wanted to believe him because the alternative was unthinkable." Claire stood abruptly, unable to remain seated. She paced to the window overlooking the parking lot, rain still falling in steady curtains. "When did you realize the truth?" 3 weeks later. I saw the missing persons posters in Seaside. I'd been avoiding that area, staying home, but I had to go for a medical appointment. The posters were everywhere. 2 identical girls with dark blonde hair, the same ages as the children Raymond had brought to my house. Martha's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I recognized them immediately." "And you said nothing," Daniel stated flatly. "I confronted Raymond first. He broke down, told me he couldn't lose another set of daughters, that these girls were meant to be his, that their real parents had been negligent, leaving them unsupervised. He swore he would never hurt them, that he only wanted to love them and protect them." Martha looked up, meeting Claire's eyes. "I told him he had to return them. He refused. Said if I reported him, he'd disappear with the girls and I'd never see them again. He said their blood would be on my hands." Claire turned from the window, fury and anguish warring in her chest. "So you chose to protect your brother over our daughters?" "I chose to keep them alive," Martha said, her voice strengthening slightly. "I didn't know what Raymond might do if he felt cornered. So I made a deal with him. I would keep his secret if he allowed me regular visits, if I could monitor the girls' well-being, make sure they were safe and healthy. I told myself I was doing the right thing, that I was protecting them from something worse." "You were protecting a kidnapper," Daniel said harshly. "I know that now. I've known it for a long time." Martha stood, walking to a small desk in the corner. She opened a drawer and removed a thick folder. "I kept records, every visit, every observation. The girls' health, their education, their emotional state. I documented everything, thinking that someday I might need to prove I tried to help them, even if I did it the wrong way." She handed the folder to Claire, who opened it with trembling hands. Inside were dozens of handwritten pages, dated entries spanning from August 2001 to the present. Claire scanned the first few entries, her vision blurring with tears. August 28, 2001. Girls seem withdrawn. Raymond has renamed them Melissa and Sarah, says their old names are tied to trauma. They respond to the new names now, but still seem confused about their identity. Raymond is patient with them, gentle. I see no signs of physical abuse. September 15, 2001. Girls are enrolled in homeschooling program. Raymond has moved to rental house in Tillamook to avoid seaside area. He's growing a beard, changed his appearance. Girls are adjusting but still ask about the lady with the red car, who I believe may be their real mother. October 2001. Raymond purchased fake birth certificates from someone he won't name. Girls now have complete false identities. He's coaching them on their new life story, telling them their mother died when they were babies, that I'm their aunt who visits regularly. Claire looked up from the folder, her hand shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. You watched this happen. You watched him brainwash our children. I convinced myself I was choosing the lesser evil, Martha said, tears streaming down her face now. Raymond was devoted to them. He never raised his hand to them, never touched them inappropriately. I checked every single visit. He made sure they had good food, warm clothes, medical care, education. He loved them the way he'd loved his biological daughters. That doesn't make it right, Daniel said, his voice rough with emotion. Love doesn't justify theft. It doesn't justify destroying a family. I know that. Martha sank back into her chair. The guilt has eaten at me every day for 15 years. I told myself that if I ever saw a clear sign of abuse or danger, I would report him immediately. But there never was one. The girls grew up healthy, educated, relatively happy in their false reality. And I told myself that was enough. Claire forced herself to keep reading through the journal entries, watching her daughters grow up in someone else's life through a stranger's observations. Birthday parties, where Raymond made elaborate cakes, school achievements documented in careful detail, the progression from homeschooling to eventual enrollment in a private school under their false identities. Melissa's interest in art, Sarah's love of marine biology. One entry from 2008 made Claire stop breathing. Girls asked Raymond about their mother today, the one who supposedly died. He showed them photos he'd altered of Elena, his deceased wife, claiming it was their mother. They cried looking at the pictures. My heart breaks watching this deception continue. Where does Raymond live now? Claire asked, her voice cold and controlled. The same house on Coastal Hills Drive. The girls moved out 2 years ago, got an apartment together in Lincoln City. They're close to him, visit every week. He's told them I'm their aunt, and I've never contradicted that story. Martha looked at them with desperate eyes. What are you going to do? We're going to tell the truth, Daniel said, standing. We're going to get our daughters back. They won't believe you easily, Martha warned. Raymond has spent 15 years constructing their reality. They have memories of growing up with him, photos, school records, friends who've known them as Melissa and Sarah Hartley their entire lives. The bracelets are the only physical evidence that contradicts their story. Then we'll start with the bracelets, Claire said, closing the folder but keeping it tucked under her arm. I'm taking this with me. Every word you've written is evidence. Martha didn't protest. There's something else you should know. Raymond has been sick, lung cancer. He was diagnosed 8 months ago, declined treatment. The doctors gave him less than a year. She paused, her expression complicated. I think that's why he encouraged the girls to attend that art fair. He's been pushing them to become more independent, to build their own lives separate from him. In his twisted way, I think he's trying to prepare them for his death. He's dying, Claire repeated, the information settling over her like a weight. Part of her wanted to feel satisfaction at his suffering, but she felt only a hollow ache. Justice delayed wasn't justice at all if the perpetrator escaped through death. He hasn't told Melissa and Sarah about the cancer, Martha continued. He doesn't want them to worry or put their lives on hold to care for him. But he's getting weaker. I don't think he has much time left. Daniel pulled out his phone, checking the time. We need to contact Detective Morris immediately. If Hartley dies before we can confront him, before he can confess, it becomes infinitely harder to prove what happened. Claire was already dialing, pressing the phone to her ear with one hand while clutching Martha's journal with the other. When Morris answered, she spoke rapidly, summarizing everything Martha had told them. Stay exactly where you are, Morris commanded. I'm contacting the Lincoln City Police Department right now. We're going to coordinate a welfare check on Raymond Hartley and bring him in for questioning. I want statements from both you and Martha Hartley. This is now an active investigation. What about Melissa and Sarah? Claire asked, her voice catching on the names that weren't really theirs. When do we tell them? One step at a time, Claire. First, we need to secure Hartley and get his confession. Then we'll work with psychologists who specialize in recovered memory and identity cases. These women have spent 15 years believing a false narrative. We have to be careful how we dismantle it. After ending the call, Claire turned to Martha, who sat with her head in her hands. Why now? Claire asked quietly. Why tell us the truth today instead of any point in the last 15 years? Martha looked up, her face ravaged by guilt and grief. Because they came to that art fair, because they're building independent lives, because Raymond is dying and soon the secret will die with him if I don't speak now. She stood on unsteady legs. And because I'm a coward who waited until the consequences seemed manageable before doing the right thing. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But those girls deserve to know who they really are before it's too late. Claire and Daniel left the apartment as rain continued to fall, carrying Martha's journal of stolen years and broken trust. Behind them, Martha Hartley stood in her doorway, watching them go. The weight of 15 years of complicit silence finally lifted, but the burden of guilt remaining. In the truck, Claire opened the journal again, flipping to the most recent entry dated just 2 weeks prior. Raymond told Melissa and Sarah today that they should pursue their dreams without worrying about him. He said he's lived a full life and wants them to do the same. He looks at them with such love and such sorrow. I think he knows his time is running out. I think some part of him wants to confess before he dies, but he's too afraid of losing them. The truth is coming. I can feel it. She was right, Claire whispered. The truth is coming. Daniel reached over and squeezed her hand. We're going to bring our daughters home. As they drove back toward the coast, Claire's phone rang. Detective Morris's name appeared on the screen. We have a problem, he said, without preamble. Raymond Hartley isn't at his residence. His car is gone, and Melissa and Sarah Hartley aren't answering their phones. The news hit Claire like a physical blow. She gripped the dashboard, her knuckles white against the vinyl. What do you mean they're not answering? Did you try the apartment? Lincoln City PD went to their address immediately, Morris replied, his voice tense. The apartment was empty but didn't show signs of struggle or hasty departure. Neighbors said they saw Melissa and Sarah leave around 4 o'clock this afternoon, about 2 hours after your encounter at the art fair. They were carrying overnight bags. Daniel accelerated slightly, the truck's engine growling as they merged onto Highway 26 heading west. Where would he take them? That's what we're trying to determine. I've issued a bolo for his vehicle, a silver 2015 Honda CR-V. We're checking his credit cards, phone records, known associates. Morris paused. Claire, I need you to think carefully. During your conversation with Melissa and Sarah at the fair, did either of them make any calls? Send any texts? Claire closed her eyes, forcing herself to replay the encounter in precise detail. Sarah pulled out her phone at one point, right after I showed them the photograph. She was holding it, but I don't know if she was calling or texting. She looked upset. She probably contacted Raymond immediately, Morris said grimly, told him about the confrontation, asked him to explain why strangers were claiming to be their parents. He would have known his time was up. So he took them and ran, Daniel stated. Or he convinced them to go somewhere with him voluntarily, Morris corrected. Remember, these women trust him completely. They believe he's their father. If he told them he needed their help or that they were in danger from delusional people making false claims, they'd go willingly. Claire's mind raced through possibilities, each more frightening than the last. He's dying, Detective. His sister told us he has terminal lung cancer. What if he's planning something desperate? "We're operating under that assumption," Morris assured her. "I've got every available unit searching coastal areas between Seaside and Florence. His house is being monitored in case he returns. We're tracking his phone, but it's currently powered off or out of range." "What about the girls' phones?" Daniel asked. "Also offline as of about 90 minutes ago. Last ping was from a cell tower near the Cascade Head Trail parking area." Morris's voice sharpened. "That's wilderness, miles of coastal forest and cliff trails. If they went in there on foot, they could be anywhere." Claire felt panic rising in her throat. "It's almost dark. The temperature's dropping. If they're out there in the rain—" "Search and rescue teams are assembling now," Morris interrupted. "Coast Guard has a helicopter standing by once visibility improves. But Claire, I need you and Daniel to stay away from the search area. If Hartley is desperate and feels cornered, the last thing we need is an emotionally charged confrontation in a remote location." "Those are our daughters," Claire said fiercely. "I'm not sitting this out." "Then come to the command post we're setting up at the Cascade Head Trailhead parking lot. You can wait there and provide any information that might help. But you cannot go into those woods. Do I have your word?" "Brr." Claire looked at Daniel, who nodded reluctantly. "Fine. We'll be there in 45 minutes. She ended the call and immediately began searching her phone for information about Cascade Head. The nature preserve featured several trails winding through old-growth forest and along dramatic coastal cliffs, some paths ending at viewpoints hundreds of feet above the Pacific Ocean. Signs warned hikers to stay back from unstable edges where erosion and winter storms had claimed sections of trail over the years. Why would he take them there? Claire wondered aloud. It's not a place you run to. There's nowhere to go except deeper into wilderness or toward the cliff edges. Daniel's expression was grim. Maybe that's the point. Maybe he knows he can't escape and doesn't intend to. The implication hung between them, too terrible to fully articulate. Claire returned to her phone, pulling up the photographs from the art fair that she had managed to capture when pretending to check messages. She had one clear shot of Melissa and Sarah standing together, their faces visible in three-quarter profile. She studied every detail, comparing them to the images burned into her memory from 15 years of desperate searching. The shape of their eyebrows, slightly arched, the way their hair fell just past their shoulders, the same length Abigail and Hannah had always preferred. The set of their mouths, serious even in repose. Small details that transcended the passage of time and the lies they'd been fed about their identities. "They have your mother's hands," Daniel said quietly, glancing at the screen. "Long fingers, narrow palms. I noticed it at the fair." Claire hadn't seen it before, but now she couldn't unsee it. Her mother had died 6 years ago, never knowing what happened to her granddaughters. The resemblance was unmistakable once Daniel pointed it out. Her phone rang again. This time it was Martha Hartley. "The police were just here," Martha said, her voice shaking. "They asked me if I knew where Raymond might go, places that were significant to him. I told them about the accident site where Elena and the girls died. But that's north of here. I don't think he'd go there." What about Cascade Head?" Claire asked. "Why would that location matter to him?" There was a long pause. It was Elena's favorite place. Before the accident, they used to hike there as a family every summer. Raymond scattered some of her ashes on one of the cliff trails, even though it's technically not allowed. He said it was where she felt closest to God. Claire's stomach clenched. "Which trail specifically?" "The upper trail, the one that's closed in winter because of erosion. It leads to a viewpoint directly above the ocean. Elena used to take the girls there and tell them about the whales migrating south." Martha's voice broke. "Mrs. Reed, you need to understand something about my brother. He's not violent, but he's also not entirely rational when it comes to those he loves. If he thinks he's about to lose Melissa and Sarah the way he lost Jessica and Jennifer, I don't know what he might do." "We're heading there now," Claire said. "If you think of anything else, anything that might help, call Detective Morris immediately." After ending the call, Claire relayed the information to Daniel. who pushed the truck faster along the winding coastal highway. Rain continued its relentless assault, reducing visibility and making the road treacherous. By the time they reached the Cascade Head trailhead, darkness had fallen completely, broken only by the harsh glare of police floodlights illuminating the parking area. Half a dozen patrol cars ringed the lot, along with 2 search and rescue vehicles and an ambulance standing by. Detective Morris stood near a mobile command station, speaking into a radio. He looked up as Claire and Daniel approached, his weathered face drawn with concern. "Any updates?" Claire demanded. "We found Hartley's vehicle abandoned at the far end of the parking area. Unlocked, keys still in the ignition. Flashlights and water bottles are missing from the trunk. One of our teams spotted footprints heading up the closed trail about 20 minutes ago. 3 sets, all heading upward." Morris gestured to the darkness beyond the floodlit area. "We have teams on the trail now, but they're proceeding carefully. The path is muddy and unstable in places." "How far to the viewpoint Martha mentioned?" Daniel asked. "About 1.5 miles, mostly uphill, in good conditions, maybe 40 minutes. In this weather, with darkness and uncertain footing, closer to an hour." Morris checked his watch. If they left around 5 o'clock and maintained a steady pace, they could already be at the top. "Hakiki!" A young officer approached, holding out a radio. "Sir, Team 2 is reporting voices ahead. They're asking permission to close distance." Morris took the radio. "Negative. Maintain current position and stand by. I don't want anyone startling them near a cliff edge." He turned to Claire and Daniel. "We have a crisis negotiator en route from Salem, ETA 30 minutes. Once she's here, we'll attempt contact." 30 minutes could be too long," Claire protested. "Let me talk to them. I'm their mother. If anyone can reach them—" "You're a stranger to them," Morris reminded her, gently but firmly. "They don't remember you. Right now, you represent a threat to the only reality they've ever known. The wrong words from you could escalate this situation." Claire wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. Instead, she paced the perimeter of the parking lot, her eyes straining toward the dark forest that had swallowed her daughters. Again. Different circumstances, but the same terrible unknowing, the same fear gnawing at her chest. More vehicles arrived. The crisis negotiator, a composed woman in her 40s named Dr. Ellen Vasquez, conferred with Morris in rapid, quiet tones. She carried a portable speaker system that could project her voice up the trail. After reviewing the case details, she turned to Claire. "Mrs. Reed, I need you to help me understand the psychology here. Raymond Hartley has terminal cancer. He knows he's dying. Why bring the girls to this specific location?" Claire thought of Martha's words. Elena's ashes scattered on the clifftop. His first family died 15 years ago, his wife and twin daughters. This place was special to them. He scattered his wife's ashes here. Dr. Vasquez nodded slowly, processing. "So this is a place of remembrance for him, possibly where he feels connected to the family he lost." She paused. "Or a place he's chosen to say goodbye." The implication was clear. Claire's legs felt weak, but Daniel's arm steadied her. "You think he's planning to—" "I think we need to proceed as if that's a possibility," Dr. Vasquez said carefully. "But here's what works in our favor. He brought both girls with him. If his intent was purely self-harm, he likely would have come alone. The fact that Melissa and Sarah are with him suggests he wants something else. Connection, perhaps, or absolution." Yeah, or he wants to take them with him," Daniel said, voicing the fear they all shared. "That's why we're not waiting any longer." Dr. Vasquez activated her radio. "All teams, this is command. We're initiating contact. Stand ready, but do not advance without my authorization." She raised the portable speaker, adjusted the volume, and her voice echoed into the darkness of the forest. "Raymond Hartley, this is Dr. Ellen Vasquez. I'm a counselor working with the Lincoln City Police Department. I know you're up on the trail with Melissa and Sarah. I want you to know that we're here to help, not to harm. We understand the situation is complicated and emotional. We'd like to talk with you. Will you respond? Silence. Only the sound of rain on leaves and the distant crash of waves against rocks far below. Dr. Vasquez waited a full minute, then repeated the message. Still nothing. Then Claire's phone vibrated in her pocket. Unknown number. She answered immediately, putting it on speaker so Morris and Dr. Vasquez could hear. Mrs. Reed? The voice was male, older, strained with emotion and physical pain. Raymond Hartley. I'm here, Claire said, her voice remarkably steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. You showed my daughters a photograph today, a photograph of two little girls who look exactly like them. Because they are them, Claire said. Those girls in the photograph are Abigail and Hannah Reed, your daughters' real names. There was a long pause. Claire could hear wind on the line, the sound of someone breathing with difficulty. I saved them, Raymond finally said. I gave them a life full of love and care. I was the one who raised them, who read them bedtime stories, who taught them to ride bikes and helped with homework. I was their father in every way that mattered. You were their kidnapper, Claire said, her composure cracking. You stole them from us, from their family, their lives, their identities. You had no right. I had every right. Raymond's voice rose desperate. God took my daughters from me. He took Elena and Jessica and Jennifer, and I had nothing. Then he showed me Abigail and Hannah, neglected and unsupervised in a yard with no fence, no protection. He was giving me a second chance. Ziki Bond, Doctor. Vasquez touched Claire's arm, a warning to be careful, but Claire continued. Raymond, I know about the cancer. I know you're sick. Is that why you brought them to this place tonight? Because you're planning to end it? I'm planning to tell them the truth, Raymond said, his voice breaking. They deserve to know before I die. But I'm afraid. I'm afraid they'll hate me. I'm afraid of losing them twice. Then bring them down, Claire urged. Come to the parking lot. We can talk about this safely. No one needs to get hurt. Melissa and Sarah already know something is wrong. They're asking questions I can't answer without destroying everything. How do I tell them that their entire lives have been built on a lie? Before Claire could respond, a new voice came through the phone, female, shaking with emotion. Is it true? Are you really our mother? Claire's breath caught. She recognized the voice from the art fair. Sarah, or rather Hannah. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'm your mother, and I've been searching for you every single day for 15 years. The silence that followed Hannah's question stretched like a wire pulled taut. Claire could hear the wind through the phone, the distant roar of ocean waves far below, the ragged breathing of three people standing on a clifftop in darkness and rain. Hannah, Claire said softly, deliberately using the name she had chosen for her daughter 22 years ago. Your real name is Hannah Reed. Your sister beside you is Abigail. And your father and I have loved you and searched for you every single day since August 14th, 2001. My name is Sarah, came the response, but the certainty had drained from the voice. Sarah Hartley. That's who I've always been. I can prove who you are, Claire continued, her voice steady despite tears streaming down her face. The bracelets you're wearing, I had them custom made for your 7th birthday by a jeweler named Marcus Chen in Cannon Beach. 3 interlinked hearts representing me, your father, and you 2 girls. The lighthouse charm is the Tillamook light where Daniel proposed to me. I have the receipt. I have photographs of you wearing them the day I gave them to you. There was movement on the line, whispered conversation Claire couldn't make out. Then Raymond spoke again, his voice defeated. They're not wearing the bracelets anymore. They took them off when we got to the viewpoint. They're sitting on the ground between us. Dr. Vasquez leaned closer to Claire's phone, her professional calm radiating through her voice. Raymond, that's significant. The girls removing the bracelets suggests they're processing difficult truths. They're questioning the narrative they've been given. This is your opportunity to give them the honesty they deserve. Will you do that? I don't know how to begin, Raymond said, his breathing labored. Claire could hear the cancer in his lungs, the wet rattle of fluid and failing tissue. "Start with the truth," Daniel said, speaking for the first time. His voice was controlled, but carried an undercurrent of 15 years of anguish. "Tell them how you took 2 little girls from their own backyard while their parents were just inside the house. Tell them how you renamed them and convinced them their mother was dead. Tell them how you stole their entire lives." "Daniel," Dr. Vasquez cautioned, but Raymond was already responding. "I watched you," he said, his words tumbling out now. "The Marlowe family, no, the Reed family. I'd been your substitute teacher the year before. I'd seen how beautiful your daughters were, how identical, how special. After I lost Jessica and Jennifer, I couldn't stop thinking about them. I would drive past your house in Seaside, watching them play." Claire felt sick, but she forced herself to remain silent, letting him continue. "That day in August, I saw them in the front yard. You had no fence. No one was supervising them. I told myself it was Providence, that God was showing me 2 angels who needed protection. I pulled over and told them I had a surprise at my house, something special to show them. They trusted me because I'd been their teacher. They got in my car." "We remember," a new voice said. Melissa Abigail speaking for the first time. "Not clearly, but I have these fragments. A man who smelled like coffee. Being scared, but also curious. Sarah has them too, don't you?" "I thought they were dreams," Hannah's voice said quietly. "Images that didn't fit with what you told us about our past." "They weren't dreams," Raymond said, his voice breaking. "They were memories I tried to bury under new ones. I took you to my sister's house in Astoria. I told her your mother had died and you were mine now. She believed me at first, then when she found out the truth, she helped me anyway. She helped me forge documents, create new identities for you. We moved to Tillamook, then eventually to Lincoln City. You made us believe we were someone else," Abigail said, anger creeping into her tone. "Our entire lives, every memory, every story about our childhood, it was all constructed." "I gave you a good life," Raymond protested weakly. "I loved you. I never hurt you. I made sure you had everything you needed." "Accept the truth," Hannah said. "Accept our real names, our real family, our real history." Morris gestured to his team, and Claire saw officers beginning to move quietly up the trail, using night vision equipment to navigate in the darkness. Dr. Vasquez continued speaking, keeping Raymond engaged, while the tactical team got into position. "Raymond, you're running out of time," Dr. Vasquez said. "The cancer is progressing. You know you don't have long. This is your last chance to do the right thing. Bring the girls down safely. Let them reunite with their real parents. Give them the closure they need and the truth they deserve." "If I do that, they'll hate me," Raymond said. "They'll remember me as the monster who stole them, not the father who raised them." "That's your consequence to bear," Daniel said firmly, "not theirs. They've already borne enough of your burden." There was a long silence. Claire could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears, could feel the tension of every person in the parking lot waiting for Raymond's response. Then Hannah spoke, her voice carrying a quiet strength. "I don't hate you," she said. "Not yet. I'm angry and confused, and I don't know what to feel. But I need to understand. I need to see these people who claim to be our parents. I need to know if what they're saying is true, and I can't do that from up here." "Please," Abigail added, "you've always taught us to face hard things, to be brave. Help us be brave now." Through the phone, Claire heard Raymond sob. "All right," he finally said. "We're coming down." Dr. Vasquez immediately radioed the tactical team to hold position and allow them to descend unimpeded. 20 minutes later, 3 figures emerged from the darkness of the trail into the harsh glare of the parking lot floodlights. Raymond Hartley was gaunt, his face gray with exhaustion and illness. He walked between Abigail and Hannah, each young woman holding one of his arms to steady him. Claire's first instinct was to run to them, but Dr. Vasquez's hand on her shoulder held her back. "Let them come to you," she murmured, "on their terms." The 3 of them stopped about 15 feet away. Raymond stood hunched, his breathing labored. The girls, Claire's daughters, though they didn't know it yet, looked at her with expressions of wariness mixed with something that might have been recognition on some cellular level. Detective Morris stepped forward. "Raymond Hartley, I'm placing you under arrest for kidnapping, custodial interference, and child identity fraud. You have the right to remain silent." "I waive my rights," Raymond interrupted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll confess to everything, but first, please, let me give them something." Morris nodded cautiously. Raymond reached into his jacket pocket slowly, producing 2 small silver bracelets. The bracelets from the photograph, from a 7th birthday party 22 years ago. He held them out to Abigail and Hannah. "Your real mother gave you these," he said. "I took them when I took you, but I could never bring myself to destroy them. I told you I bought them at a store, but I lied. They're yours. They've always been yours." Hannah took the bracelets with trembling hands. She looked down at them, then at Claire, then back at the jewelry. "Why?" she asked Raymond. "Why did you do this to us?" "Because I was broken," Raymond said simply. "I lost everything when my first family died, and instead of healing, I took someone else's family to fill the void. I convinced myself it was right, that I was saving you, but I was only saving myself from grief. And I destroyed your chance to know your real parents, to grow up as who you really were." He looked at Claire and Daniel. "I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know nothing I say can give back what I took, but I am sorry." Claire stepped forward then, unable to hold back any longer. She stopped a few feet from Hannah and Abigail, giving them space but close enough to see the details of their faces. Her daughters' faces, matured but unmistakable. "I'm your mother," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "My name is Claire Reed. This is your father, Daniel Reed. We named you Abigail May and Hannah Rose. You were born on February 15th, 2001, 3 minutes apart. Abigail, you came first. You loved strawberry ice cream and hated wearing socks to bed. Hannah, you collected seashells and wanted to be a marine biologist even at age 7. Hannah gasped softly. "I am studying marine biology. I'm finishing my degree next year." "You always loved the ocean," Claire said, smiling through tears. "Even as a toddler, you couldn't get enough of the water." Abigail was staring at the bracelets in her sister's hands. "The lighthouse. I've had dreams about a lighthouse, and a woman with red hair holding my hand." "I had red hair then," Claire said, touching her now graying auburn hair. "I didn't start dyeing out the gray until my 30s. "This doesn't make sense," Abigail said, but her voice lacked conviction. "How do we know you're not the ones lying? How do we know Raymond is the one telling the truth now, and you're just—" "DNA," Morris interjected. "We can run tests that will prove maternity and paternity definitively. Results take a few days, but they'll remove all doubt." "In the meantime," Dr. Vasquez added, "we have Raymond's confession, witness testimony from his sister Martha, and extensive documentation. You don't have to make any decisions tonight except to be safe and to begin processing what you've learned." Raymond swayed on his feet, and 2 paramedics moved forward to support him. "I need to go to the hospital," he admitted. "I'm sorry, girls, I'm sorry. I won't be here to help you through what comes next." "You've done enough," Hannah said, her voice hard. She looked at Abigail. "We need to know the truth, all of it, no more lies." Over the next 3 hours, Raymond Hartley gave a full confession at the Lincoln City Police Department, recorded and witnessed. He detailed the abduction, the forged documents, the systematic indoctrination of 2 7-year-old girls into new identities. He provided names of people who had helped him, including his sister Martha. He surrendered the original birth certificates he had stolen, the fake documents he had created, and photographs he had altered to construct a false family history. Claire and Daniel sat in a separate interview room while forensic technicians collected DNA samples from everyone involved. Detective Morris brought them copies of the confession, his expression grave. "This is going to be a complex case," he warned. "Raymond will face charges, but given his terminal condition, He'll likely die before trial. His sister Martha will face charges as an accessory. But the real work ahead is helping your daughters, Abigail and Hannah, reconcile 15 years of false memory with their actual history. When can we see them? Claire asked. They're in another interview room with Dr. Vasquez and a specialist in recovered memory. They're processing a significant trauma right now. Their entire sense of identity has been shattered. Morris paused. They've asked to see you, though. They want to talk. Claire and Daniel were led to a small conference room where Abigail and Hannah sat close together, still wearing the clothes from the art fair that seemed like a lifetime ago. Both young women looked exhausted and overwhelmed. The silver bracelets now rested on the table between them. "We've been looking at photos," Hannah said quietly, gesturing to a tablet on the table. "The detective showed us pictures from the missing persons case. Pictures of you two holding those same photos of us at age 7, making appeals for information. Pictures of searches, vigils, posters all over Oregon and Washington." "We never stopped looking," Daniel said, his voice rough with emotion. "Every lead, every possible sighting, every psychic who claimed they could help. We followed everything. The police said you kept our bedroom exactly as it was for 10 years, Abigail said, that you finally packed it up but saved everything in storage." Claire nodded. "I couldn't let go. I couldn't accept that you were gone forever. We have so many questions," Hannah said, "about who we were supposed to become, what our lives should have been." "We have time for all of those answers," Claire assured them, "as much time as you need." Abigail reached out and touched one of the bracelets. "I remember this now, not clearly, but enough. A birthday party, pink balloons. You putting this on my wrist and telling me it meant we were connected forever, the 3 hearts. You, me, and Hannah," Claire confirmed, "always connected. Even when we didn't know it," Hannah added softly. They talked for another hour, sharing fragments of memories and beginning the long process of reconciliation. When a social worker arrived to discuss next steps, counseling, legal proceedings, the practicalities of reconstructing stolen identities, Dr. Vasquez suggested they all go home and rest. "This is a marathon, not a sprint," she said gently. "You've found each other. That's the most important part. The rest will take time, patience, and professional support." As they prepared to leave, Abigail and Hannah stood facing Claire and Daniel. The 4 of them regarded each other in the harsh fluorescent light of the police station. 2 generations separated by lies and years, but connected by biology and love that transcended time. "I don't know how to be your daughter yet," Abigail said honestly. "I don't know how to stop thinking of Raymond as my father, even though I'm angry at him. This is all so overwhelming." "We understand," Daniel said. "We're not asking you to be anything except honest about what you're feeling. We'll take this as slowly as you need." Hannah picked up both bracelets from the table. She handed one to Abigail, and together they fastened them on their left wrists. "These feel right," Hannah said, "like something that belongs to us. I want to wear mine while we figure everything else out." "Me too," Abigail agreed. They didn't embrace. It was too soon for that. The wounds too fresh and the relationships too undefined. But as they left the police station and walked into the cool Oregon night where rain had finally stopped and stars had begun to appear, Claire felt something she hadn't experienced in 15 years. Hope. 2 weeks later, DNA results confirmed what everyone already knew. Melissa and Sarah Hartley were Abigail and Hannah Reed. Raymond Hartley was in hospice care, his condition deteriorating rapidly. Martha Hartley had been charged but released pending trial, cooperating fully with prosecutors. Claire and Daniel met with their daughters twice a week at Dr. Vasquez's office, slowly rebuilding connections that had been severed so violently. They shared photo albums and stories, answered questions about family history and medical background, listened as Abigail and Hannah processed 15 years of false memories and struggled to reconcile the father who had raised them with the criminal who had stolen them. On a gray afternoon in late autumn, the 4 of them stood together at Cannon Beach, near the shop where Marcus Chen had made those bracelets 22 years earlier. The jeweler, now in his 70s, had agreed to create 2 more bracelets to match the originals, one for Claire and one for Daniel. "Now we're all connected," Marcus said, as he fastened the bracelets on their wrists, 4 hearts linked together as it should be. They walked along the beach afterward, the iconic haystack rock rising from the surf just as it had in photographs from their daughter's stolen childhood. Abigail and Hannah walked ahead, still more comfortable with each other than with their parents, but occasionally turning back to share an observation or ask a question. "It's not the reunion I imagined," Claire admitted to Daniel, watching her daughters navigate tide pools in the distance. "I thought finding them would fix everything instantly, but this is harder than I expected." "It's not a fairy tale ending," Daniel agreed. "It's a beginning, a complicated, messy, difficult beginning. But it's ours," Hannah called back to them, holding up a perfect sand dollar she had found wedged between rocks. "Mom, Dad, look at this." The words caught Claire off guard. It was the first time either daughter had used those terms. She saw Hannah realize what she'd said, watched the confusion and acceptance play across her face, before she smiled tentatively. "That's beautiful," Claire called back. "A good omen." They continued walking as the sun broke through clouds, casting long shadows across wet sand. Behind them, footprints marked their path, 4 sets of prints walking together toward an uncertain future, but walking together nonetheless. In 15 years of searching, Claire had imagined this moment countless ways. The reality was harder and more complex than any fantasy. But as she watched her daughters explore the beach, their silver bracelets catching the light, she understood something fundamental. Love didn't require perfection or easy answers. It required patience, honesty, and the courage to rebuild what had been broken. The truth had finally come to light. Justice, though imperfect and incomplete, had been served. And a family torn apart by one man's selfish grief had begun the long journey toward healing. It wasn't the ending Claire had dreamed of during 15 years of desperate searching, but it was enough. It was home.